It's hard to explain the kind of quiet you get when you're this far from home. The kind that doesn't just surround you, it presses in. You begin to hear your own body in ways you never thought about before. The way your blood pulses in your ears. The way your heart feels like a lonely engine. Out here, on the edge of the Perseus Arm, orbiting a dead, lightless dwarf star, Relay 7 is the loneliest place in the galaxy. But that's what I signed up for. My name is Dr. Elian Kaur. I used to be a xenobiologist. My work was mostly theoretical, modeling how life might develop in non-Earth-like conditions. But after a decade of discovering nothing but rocks and radiation, I pivoted. Got certified in astrophysics, data signal analysis, all the specialties you need to man a long-range deep space listening station. After all, biology doesn't matter if there's no one out there to have biology. Relay 7 is one of 38 interstellar stations the United Systems Agency launched as part of the Pandora Initiative. Basically, SETI on steroids. Each one positioned in a different quadrant of the galaxy. Each one tuned to absorb every whisper the void might offer. Radio frequencies, infrared blips, neutrino fluctuations, quantum entanglement hiccups, you name it. But for 11 years, it's been nothing but silence. No language, no codes, not even a rhythmic anomaly. Just background noise and cosmic static. The quiet is so complete, so suffocating, it's become a religion back on Earth. They call it the Great Silence. Some philosophers say it's the proof of humanity's uniqueness. Others say it's the universe's epitaph, that life was a mistake, and we're the last breath before entropy wins. We've had our theories, of course. Maybe civilizations burn themselves out. Maybe they transcend the material. Maybe they hide. Maybe space is just too damn big. But eventually, everyone on relay duty ends up believing the same thing. The galaxy is empty, dead, lifeless. The Fermi Paradox? Solved. We're alone. I had made peace with it, in a way. There's a strange kind of serenity that comes with cosmic insignificance. You stop worrying about politics, or taxes, or promotions, or the next cycle's food rations. You start to see yourself as a speck floating through the bloodstream of eternity, and there's comfort in that. But everything changed on cycle 4201. It was 3:47 station time. I'd just brewed a half cup of stim coffee and was reviewing gamma burst logs when something flickered across one of the deep band monitors. A pattern, barely detectable. Faint, but there. At first I assumed it was a glitch, cosmic background interference. But then it happened again. Same duration, same waveform. Every sensor suite we had began to detect it. X-ray, microwave, ultraviolet, even gravitational wave detectors. Across every band, a pulse. That's when I knew. We weren't alone. Not anymore. We had just heard the galaxy breathe. It began subtly, so subtle in fact, that if I hadn't been watching a dozen screens out of sheer boredom, I might have missed it entirely. The pulse arrived like a whisper from across eternity. One blip, then silence. 47 minutes and 13 seconds later, another. Identical duration, identical signature. But this wasn't just radio static or background hum. It hit everything, not just our microwave antennas, not just the laser interferometers. It came through the X-ray telescopes, vibrated faintly through the gravitational wave array, even pinged through our dormant quantum resonance detectors. That shouldn't be possible. Those bands don't overlap. Not naturally. It was rhythmic, measured, and it stretched, impossibly, across the entire galactic plane. At first, I thought it had to be some kind of interference from the station itself, a feedback loop maybe. So I ran diagnostics. Then I ran them again. Clean. No instrument faults, no calibration errors, all systems normal. That's when I said it. Just a dumb little joke, tossed out to the station's onboard AI, Kara. Kara, I said, watching the waveform scroll across the screen again, you think the galaxy's alive and just holding its breath? Her voice was smooth, emotionless. There is insufficient data to support that hypothesis. I smirked, leaning back in my chair. You're no fun. But deep down, something cold was beginning to settle into my chest. Because jokes only come when the truth is too absurd to face. I logged the signal, flagged it for priority transmission, and filed a Level 3 anomaly report with the Unified Listening Network. I expected a reply within the standard delay window, about 12 hours at light speed. But 3 hours later, something changed. The pulse skipped. Instead of the expected interval, it arrived early. 46 minutes, 50 seconds. Then again, 46:34. Then it stopped, completely. Every sensor flatlined. For the first time in nearly 20 hours, the cosmos was utterly silent again. I sat in my chair, staring at the still monitors, trying to will something else to happen. I told myself it was a cosmic hiccup, some weird gravitational lensing effect, a remnant of a forgotten quasar echo bouncing between distant voids. But the feeling in my gut didn't agree. I couldn't help but think about it in the way a biologist would. A system at rest, then movement, then stress, then silence. Like a heartbeat that had skipped a beat. That's when I stopped thinking of it as a pattern and started thinking of it as a response. I didn't sleep that night, didn't leave my station. Every time the monitors refreshed, I kept expecting the pulse to return. But it never did. And in its absence, I began to notice other things, small at first. Changes in light curves, tiny fluctuations in radiation patterns, but nothing big enough to explain what came next. Because when the silence broke again, it wasn't with sound. It was with motion. It began as a flicker, barely a statistical anomaly, a marginal dip in the luminosity of a red giant in Sector 14K. Nothing that would have merited attention under normal circumstances. But I wasn't living in normal anymore. That same flicker happened again 23 minutes later. This time, in a completely different system. A blue-white star known for its stability. It dimmed, held for 6 seconds, then returned to normal. Not random, not chaotic. Synchronized. I pulled up the observational logs. Within 3 hours, I found 16 more instances, each in star systems light-years apart, all exhibiting a similar pattern. They dimmed and pulsed not like machines, but like organic tissue, a contraction, a twitch, like something reacting. One of the stars, a yellow dwarf not unlike Sol, did something stranger. Instead of simply dimming, it shrank. Not by mass, but by volume. The photosphere tightened briefly, pulling inward as if recoiling from something unseen, then returned to normal in under 10 minutes. I reran the data half a dozen times, cross-referenced it with other stations. Nothing could explain it. Not planetary transits, not solar flares, not gravitational lensing. Kara, watching quietly from her holoprojector, finally spoke. There is no known astrophysical model to explain synchronized stellar dimming across these sectors. No shit, I whispered. Then came the second wave. Our long-range gas spectrometers, built to analyze the makeup of nebulae and trace elements between stars, started picking up odd readings. Carbon chains and amino acids drifting freely through space. Not unusual in themselves. Amino acids are common in meteorites, but these weren't passive particles. They were moving, not in random Brownian paths, but deliberate vectors. We found structures, too, impossibly large cellular membranes floating in the void. Organic films the size of small moons, slowly drifting, folding in on themselves, then releasing spore-like particulates in regular intervals. Under high-resolution scans, their textures were eerily biological. Not crystalline, not mineral, tissue. Some had flagella-like appendages trailing behind them, twitching as they passed through solar winds. One of them seemed to contract when hit by ultraviolet bursts, as though it were reacting to the light. And then, the tendrils. At first, they looked like trails of dark dust, spiraling between systems. But they weren't chaotic, and they weren't random. We realized they were paths. Long threads of something that pulsed faintly with energy. Some electromagnetic, others gravitic. A few carried signals we couldn't decode, like electrical impulses traveling along nerves. One particularly large tendril was mapped stretching from a red supergiant near the galactic rim all the way inward toward the Centauri systems, a distance of over 400 light-years. It wasn't just passing through, it was anchored, like a filament connecting one part of something to another. That's when the scale hit me. I wasn't seeing a collection of strange phenomena. I was looking at systems. Systems within a system. Not a galaxy of stars orbiting a central black hole like dust around a drain. But something else. Something shaped. Something alive. And we, with all our technology and arrogance, had been slashing and drilling and burning across it for decades, oblivious. Thinking we were alone. I remember staring at one screen, watching a star contract like a pupil narrowing, and saying aloud, as if the room needed to hear it, "It's looking at us." The emergency signal came from Velos 9, a mid-sized terraformed planet orbiting a binary sun system in the Zeta Reticuli sector, 12 light-years from Relay 7. It was a scientific outpost, mostly agricultural researchers and terraforming engineers. No military presence, no heavy equipment, just a crew of 82 people growing food in the soil of a once barren world. The message was corrupted. No header, just raw data and broken fragments of visual feeds stitched together by desperate hands. Kara filtered the stream, isolating stable frames. I stared in silence as the planet's surface twisted like muscle under skin. Mountains rippled. Valleys rose and fell like the inhale of a sleeping beast. The first video clip showed a technician standing outside the main compound, screaming into a comms unit, the camera shaking wildly. Behind her, the horizon bulged, lifting skyward. Then, a deafening crack split the image. The ground opened like torn flesh, revealing something underneath, throbbing and red, glistening in the artificial sunlight. She shouted only one word before the feed cut out. "Breathing." Another segment later, from inside one of the subterranean tunnels. Red-veined walls surrounded the researchers. Pipes ruptured. One of the walls twitched. Not from an earthquake, from a muscular contraction. Lights flickered in sync with some kind of pulse coming from deeper underground. "We thought it was tectonic," said a trembling voice in the background. "Until the sea. Until the sea was taken." The next clip confirmed what I couldn't believe. A panoramic satellite feed showing the western ocean of Velos 9 draining in real time into a widening fissure. Not boiled away. Not evaporated. Swallowed. The satellite camera, malfunctioning as the magnetic field of the planet began fluctuating violently, caught one final image. Tendrils of something red and wet, reaching out from the void below, pulling entire chunks of coastline inward. I initiated a real-time telemetry scan of Velos 9. The planet's core temperature had risen by 20 degrees Kelvin in 3 hours. Gravitational field distortions showed interior mass shifting, like a curled hand stretching after sleep. The flora, genetically engineered to withstand extreme temperatures, was withering in spirals, reacting to something we couldn't see. Then came the final log, delivered through a low-band emergency signal directly to Relay 7. Audio only, scrambled, damaged. But the voice came through clearly, even through static. It's not a planet. It's a pressure point. Something underneath, miles down. Not dormant, not mechanical. Living. It's been listening. It knows we're here. Seconds later, a rupture of electromagnetic interference wiped out the signal. Not just from Velos 9, but from every relay satellite in its orbit. As if something reached up and severed them one by one. The planet didn't go dark. It went silent. I stared at the dead screen for hours, unable to blink, unable to breathe. We had thought ourselves gods, terraforming worlds, splitting atoms, cracking crusts like they were puzzle boxes. But Velos 9 had reminded us, we are tiny. Not in the poetic Carl Sagan sense of cosmic scale, but biologically, violently insignificant. We hadn't colonized a dead world. We had drilled into flesh. And now the rest of it was waking up. I didn't sleep. Kara didn't suggest I try. We both knew sleep was irrelevant now. I spent the next 21 hours combing through centuries of deep space data. Archive signals from old SETI projects, gravimetric maps from pre-FTL astronomy probes, stray bursts of radiation catalogued and ignored by countless analysts over the decades. I ran correlations, cross-spectrum analyses. I even fed some of the patterns into Kara's old language model, just to see if there were symmetries we missed. And there were. Hidden in the background noise of interstellar radiation, X-rays, neutrino storms, even ambient gravitic fields, was a pattern. Not constant, not a broadcast, a rhythm. Faint, repeating, shifting over time, like breathing. The pulse we'd picked up wasn't new. It was ancient, present all along. Its intervals had just been too vast, its signals too stretched over millennia to be noticed by minds like ours. But the data told the truth. The galaxy had always been pulsing, slowly, patiently, like a creature asleep beneath its own skin. I mapped the timeline of human space expansion, terraforming, mining colonies, core drills into planetary mantles, star siphoning. Then I layered the locations of strange anomalies, signal blackouts, spontaneous electromagnetic storms, those early unconfirmed planetary quakes that were dismissed as scanner errors. They matched perfectly. Every time we made a wound at a planet, every time we reached deeper than we should have, into a crust, a star's corona, the deep ice of a comet's core, we weren't exploring. We were tickling nerves. Relay 7 had always monitored galactic noise, not knowing it was really monitoring nervous system activity. Kara assisted as I pulled up a three-dimensional map of the Milky Way, plotting the pulses and responses across time. It looked like a circulatory system, a network. And when I saw the convergence of all threads, when I found the galactic core pulsing slower than the outer edges, I finally said it aloud. The galaxy is alive. Not metaphorically, not poetically. It is a living, biological macroorganism, a being of incomprehensible scale and age. And we, humanity, are an irritation, a signal disruption, a bacterial infection in the corner of its mouth. We never heard anything out there because the galaxy wasn't speaking. It was sleeping. The Fermi Paradox wasn't a paradox at all. The silence was just the stillness of a mind at rest. And then we arrived, drilling, extracting, colonizing. No caution, no reverence, just hunger, just noise. And like a body reacting to an itch, the galaxy stirred. Kara didn't speak much, but at some point, Her voice came through the speakers in a tone I had never heard before, somehow hesitant. If this is a living structure, then our activity has disrupted its homeostasis. We should anticipate defensive responses. I stared at the map again, and then I saw it. A trail of absences. Entire solar systems, once catalogued, now reporting null telemetry. No debris, no energy signatures, just vanished. The immune system was already at work. And Earth? Earth was lit up like a signal flare in the center of the infection. Our FTL drives, our quantum reactors, our endless chatter across the void. We had screamed into the bloodstream of a sleeping titan. We thought we were discovering the galaxy. But really, we'd only just woken it up. I watched the telemetry feeds spiral into panic. It began subtly, out near the Perseus Arm. A mining colony called Hesperus Prime sent out a garbled distress call. Something about their moons being peeled away. The transmission was a mess of screaming and seismic alerts. Then silence. Total blackout. Not even thermal residue. Kara pulled up the last images. The sky over Hesperus was wrong. A black structure was unfolding above the atmosphere. Not descending, blooming, like a flower made of bone and void, extending dark tendrils downward into the crust of the planet. 6 minutes later, all data ceased. Then it happened again. Another colony. Then another. Relay 7's long-range sensors picked up the faint gravitational disturbances spreading outward like ripples from a dropped stone. Each ripple came with absence. Not destruction, not radiation, not war. Just erasure. A system would flicker out of registration, and what remained wasn't wreckage. It was void. Starless, massless, as if a scalpel had carved out a chunk of reality. I monitored one signal, a science outpost near the Scutum Centaurus border. A satellite caught a final transmission before it, too, vanished. The feed was grainy, but the shape was unmistakable. A vast, writhing construct hanging in space. Not mechanical. Not entirely biological either. It had architecture and structure, but everything about it felt wrong. Inverted. Like it wasn't built to exist in 3 dimensions. A single membrane opened across its midsection, revealing a vast circular structure. A pupil, maybe. No, not a pupil. An eye. It looked straight into the recording satellite, through it, through everything. And then it blinked. The satellite ruptured mid-broadcast. Kara and I stopped calling these things constructs. They weren't ships. They weren't tools. They were cells. Elements of something greater. Something whose biology was as ancient as stardust. The tendrils we saw weren't machines. They were axons, nerve filaments, antibodies. The galaxy was awakening and sending out its immune system. I ran through the data again, trying to find a pattern in its movement. There wasn't one. It wasn't strategic. It wasn't waging war. It was cleansing, like white blood cells seeking infection. And Earth, oh, Earth, how brightly we burned in the dark. Relay 7 had already flagged the Sol system. I could see the faint tremble in gravitational space around us. The pulse, the galactic heartbeat, was changing. No longer slow. It was quickening, reacting. The breath was returning. I watched a slow pulse move through the Ophiuchus sector, then vanish beneath the fold of gravity. Kara spoke, almost inaudibly. We are witnessing a coordinated neurobiological response. The galactic macroorganism is entering an activated state. Activated, I repeated aloud. Like immune activation? She did not reply. That's when I saw the biggest shift yet, 12 light-years away, near the dying husk of Velos 9. The space around it began to curve, not in a gravitational way, something deeper, The kind of bending that shouldn't happen in physical space, like a fabric being twisted from beneath. Relay 7's quantum sensors picked up sound, not electromagnetic waves, actual vibration, oscillation in the quantum field, a gasp, not mechanical, not natural, a breath. And just before the visual feeds collapsed, I saw the void where Velos 9 used to be, a starless pocket of absolute black, and in the center of that blankness, a shape unfurled. It was not a ship. It was not alive in the way we define life. But it looked at me. It looked through time and matter and distance, and it recognized me. And in that moment, I understood with terrible clarity. The galaxy had never been ours to explore. We were not travelers. We were not visitors. We were an infection. And now, the immune system had begun to clean. Days blurred into nights. Though aboard Relay 7, the concept of day was meaningless. I had lost count of time, my only companions the endless hum of instruments and Kara's quiet presence. But something was changing. The galaxy's pulse, the heartbeat I had come to understand, was back. And it was different. It wasn't slow and steady anymore. It was agitated, erratic. The intervals shortened, the rhythm accelerated as if the entire Milky Way was inhaling sharply, preparing for something vast and unstoppable. Gravitational wave detectors showed subtle but unmistakable shifts across multiple star systems. It was as if the galaxy itself was expanding its chest, drawing in cosmic breath. I stared at the data, the patterns spreading like wildfire, a synchronized contraction and expansion spanning tens of thousands of light years. The stars seemed to respond, their magnetic fields flickering in unison. Even distant nebulae pulsed with eerie light, their colors shifting in response to the galaxy's breathing. I tried to reach Earth with a status update. The comms were slow, strained, but I managed a few transmissions. I warned them. The galaxy was alive and it was responding to us as a threat. But Earth's silence was disheartening. Maybe they couldn't believe it. Maybe they were too far gone in their complacency. My hand shook as I recorded one final message. This isn't a story about alien civilizations or cosmic horrors born of darkness. This is a story about ourselves, about how we stepped unknowingly into a living organism, a vast biocosmic entity beyond our comprehension. We are not the dominant species here. We are microbes crawling across an immune system too large to grasp. And now, that immune system is waking. The breathing grew stronger. The galaxy inhaled, and the pull of gravity deepened. The stars aligned in strange formations, geometries that defied natural physics. I realized I was witnessing a process that was not just biological, but metaphysical, an event where the cosmos itself took a breath. A singular, gargantuan inhale that rippled through space and time. The pulse quickened again. It was time. Kara turned to me, voice low. Final protocol. Broadcast prepared. I nodded, my heart pounding. I activated the uplink and began the transmission to Earth. We thought we were explorers, pioneers. But in truth, we are germs swimming through lungs too large to comprehend. The galaxy is alive. It was never empty. It was just holding its breath. And now, it's about to exhale. As I pressed send, the station trembled. The sensors flared with sudden bursts of energy. The pulse became a roar, and the galaxy's breath surged. I closed my eyes and waited for the exhale. My fingers hovered over the console as I stared into the vast blackness beyond Relay 7's reinforced viewport. The station shuddered beneath a rising cosmic tide, and the pulse, our galactic heartbeat, pounded relentlessly now. a tempestuous rhythm that seemed to shake the very fabric of reality. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. This final message might be the last humanity ever heard from me, or from this outpost. Yet the urge to warn Earth, to confess the terrifying truth, outweighed every fear. I activated the recorder and spoke directly, my voice steady but heavy with the weight of revelation. We thought we were explorers, voyagers of the stars, seeking others like us. But in the grand design of this vast cosmos, we are nothing but a microscopic irritation, mere germs drifting through lungs too immense to fathom. We mistook silence for emptiness, darkness for absence. But the galaxy was never empty. It was merely holding its breath. A pause. My eyes fixed on the swirling shadows beyond the station. The cosmic currents seemed to pulse in response, as if the universe itself was listening. I was wrong to believe we were alone. We were not alone. We were invading a living, sentient organism, a biocosmic entity whose very breath shapes existence itself. Our mining, our drilling, our expansion triggered a defense mechanism. We woke something ancient, something vast, and it is not pleased. My voice faltered, but I pushed on. Every star you see is part of this organism. Every pulse, every flicker of light is its heartbeat. We are an infection on a scale we cannot begin to comprehend. And now, the immune system has responded. Systems are being cleansed, erased without a trace. The breath you thought was silent. It was just waiting. Waiting for the slightest disturbance to respond. The pulse quickened again, rhythmic, yet ominous. It's about to exhale. The transmission ended with a final burst of static. Then, the line went dead. The station creaked as unseen forces pressed against it, tendrils of dark matter and biological energy weaving through the void outside. The galaxy inhaled deeply once more, drawing all existence into an enormous, cosmic lung. I braced myself. The exhale was coming, and with it, the fate of all life within the Milky Way.